Second Chronicles chapter 23. Then in the 7th year, Jehoiada summoned his courage and took the commanders of hundreds into a covenant with him. Azariah son of Jeroham, Ishmael son of Jehohanan, Azariah son of Obed, Messiah son of Adai, and Elishaphat son of Zikri. They made a circuit throughout Judah. They gathered the Levites from all the cities of Judah and the heads of the families of Israel, and they came to Jerusalem. Then the whole assembly made a covenant with the king in God's temple. Jehoiada said to them, "Here is the king's son. He must reign, just as the Lord promised concerning David's sons. This is what you are to do. 1/3 of you, priests and Levites, who are coming on duty on the Sabbath, are to be gatekeepers. 1/3 are to be at the king's palace, and 1/3 are to be at the foundation gate. And all the troops will be in the courtyards in the Lord's temple. No one is to enter the Lord's temple, but the priests and those Levites who serve. They may enter because they are holy. But all the people are to obey the requirements of the Lord. You must completely surround the king with weapons in hand. Anyone who enters the temple is to be put to death. You must be with the king in all his daily tasks." So the commanders of hundreds did everything Jehoiada, the priest, commanded. They each brought their men, those coming on duty on the Sabbath, and those going off duty on the Sabbath. For Jehoiada the priest did not release the divisions. Jehoiada the priest gave to the commanders of hundreds King David's spears, shields, and quivers that were in God's temple. Then he stationed all the troops with their weapons in hand, surrounding the king, from the right side of the temple to the left side, by the altar and by the temple. They brought out the king's son, put the crown on him, gave him the testimony, and made him king. Jehoiada and his sons anointed him and cried, "Long live the king." When Athaliah heard the noise from the troops, the guards, and those praising the king, she went to the troops in the Lord's temple. As she looked, there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. The commanders and the trumpeters were by the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, while the singers with musical instruments were leading the praise. Athaliah tore her clothes and screamed, "Treason, treason." She was overthrown without her knowledge, of course. That was a coup. Then Jehoiada the priest sent out the commanders of hundreds, those in charge of the army, saying, "Take her out between the ranks and put anyone who follows her to death by the sword." For the priest had said, "Do not put her to death in the Lord's temple." So they arrested her, and she went by the entrance of the horses' gate to the king's palace, where they put her to death. Then Jehoiada made a covenant between himself, the king, and the people, that they would be the Lord's people. So all the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They broke its altars and images into pieces and killed Mattan, the priest of Baal, at the altars. So those were the people with Athaliah. Of course, Athaliah was an idol worshiper. She was the grandson of Omri, Ahab's. So she was from the Ahab's family. Of course, they were idol worshippers, and that was why she was able to do that in Judah, because Jehoshaphat intermarried, okay, married from the household of Ahab. And so they had an entrance into Jerusalem because of that. Then Jehoiada put the oversight of the Lord's temple into the hands of the Levitical priest, whom David had appointed over the Lord's temple, to offer burnt offerings to the Lord, as it is written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and song ordained by David. He stationed gatekeepers at the gates of the Lord's temple, so that nothing unclean could enter for any reason. Then he took with him the commanders of hundreds, the nobles, the governors of the people, and all the people of the land, and brought the king down from the Lord's temple. They entered the king's palace through the upper gate, and seated the king on the throne of the kingdom. All the people of the land rejoiced, and the city was quiet, for they had put Amaziah to death by the sword. Okay, so that was King Joash was installed. Joash was installed as king in Judah, in Jerusalem over Judah. Joash was 7 years old when he became king. 7 years, so he was the youngest king. When he became king, he reigned 40 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Zibiah. She was from Beersheba. Throughout the time of Jehoiada the priest, Joash did what was right in the Lord's sight. Jehoiada acquired 2 wives for him, and he was the father of sons and daughters. Afterwards, Joash took it to heart to renovate the Lord's temple. So he gathered the priests and the Levites and said, "Go out to the cities of Judah and collect money from all Israel to repair the temple of your God as needed year by year, and do it quickly." However, the Levites did not hurry. So the king called Jehoiada, the high priest, and said, "Why haven't you required the Levites to bring from Judah and Jerusalem the tax imposed by the Lord's servants, Moses, and the assembly of Israel, for the tenth of the testimony, for the sons of that wicked Amaziah broke into the Lord's temple and even used the sacred things of the Lord's temple for the Baals." At the king's command, a chest was made and placed outside the gates of the Lord's temple. Then the proclamation was issued in Judah and Jerusalem that the tax God's servant Moses imposed on Israel in the wilderness be brought to the Lord. All the leaders and all the people rejoiced, brought the tax, and put it in the chest until it was full. Whenever the chest was brought by the Levites to the king's overseers, and when they saw that there was a large amount of money, the king's secretary and the high priest's deputy came and emptied the chest, picked it up, and returned it to its place. They did this daily and gathered the money in abundance. Then the king and Jehoiada gave it to those in charge of the labor on the Lord's temple, who were hiring masons and carpenters to renovate the Lord's temple, also blacksmiths and coppersmiths to repair the Lord's temple. The workmen did their work, and through them the repairs progressed. They restored God's temple to its specifications and reinforced it. When they finished, they presented the rest of the money to the king and Jehoiada, who made articles for the Lord's temple with it, articles for ministry and for making burnt offerings, and laddus and articles of gold and silver. They regularly offered burnt offerings in the Lord's temple throughout Jehoiada's life. Then Jehoiada died when he was old and full of days. He was 130 years old at his death. He was buried in the city of David with the kings, because he had done what was good in Israel with respect to God and his temple. However, after the death of Jehoiada, the rulers of Judah came and paid homage to the king. Then the king listened to them, and they abandoned the temple of the Lord God of their ancestors and served the Asherah poles and the idols. So there was wrath against Judah and Jerusalem for this guilt of theirs. Nevertheless, he sent them prophets to bring them back to the Lord. They admonished them, but they would not listen. The Spirit of God took control of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada, the priest. He stood above the temple and said to them, "This is what the Lord says. Why are you transgressing the Lord's commands, and you do not prosper? Because you have abandoned the Lord, he has also abandoned you." But they conspired against him and stoned him at the king's command in the courtyard of the Lord's temple. King Joash did not remember the kindness that Zechariah's father Jehoiada had extended to him, but killed his son. While he was dying, he said, "May the Lord see and demand an account." So after the death of Jehoiada, the priest, who was guiding King Joash, remember, Joash came in as king as early as age 7, and so it was this priest that guided him in the path of the Lord, and he did right. Okay, why the priest was alive, but the moment Jehoiada died, he went astray. Okay, and he began to worship idols, and he eventually killed Jehoiada's son, whom the Lord sent to warn him. Okay, because Jehoiada's son also was a priest, but the Lord sent him to warn Joash, but Joash decided to kill him. At the turn of the year, an Aramean army went to war against Joash. They entered Judah and Jerusalem and destroyed all the leaders of the people among them, and sent all the plunder to the king in Damascus. Although the Aramean army came with only a few men, the Lord handed over a vast army to them, because the people of Judah had abandoned the Lord, the God of their ancestors. So they executed judgment on Joash. And when the Arameans saw that Joash had many wounds, they left him. His servants conspired against him and killed him on his bed, because he had shed the blood of the sons of Jehoiada the priest. So he died, and they buried him in the city of David, but they did not bury him in the tombs of the kings. Those who conspired against him were Zabad, son of the Ammonite woman, Shemet, and Jehozabad, son of the Moabite woman, Shimrit. Concerning his sons, the many oracles about him, and the restoration of the Lord's temple, they are recorded in the writing of the book of the kings. His son Amaziah became king in his place. That is, Joash's son became king after him. So let's see chapter 25. Let's quickly go through chapter 25. So Amaziah became king when he was 25 years old. He reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan. She was from Jerusalem. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord, but not completely. He did not completely surrender unto the Lord. As soon as the kingdom was firmly in his grasp, he executed his servants who had murdered his father, the king. However, he did not put their children to death, because it is written in the law and in the book of Moses, where the Lord commanded, fathers must not die because of children, and children must not die because of their fathers, but each one will die for his own sin. Then Amaziah gathered Judah and assembled them according to patriarchal family, according to commanders of thousands, and according to commanders of hundreds. He numbered those 20 years old or more for all Judah and Benjamin. He found there to be 300,000 choice men who could serve in the army, bearing spear and shield. Then, for 7,500 pounds of silver, he hired 100,000 more warriors from Israel. However, a man of God came to him and said, "King, do not let Israel's army go with you, for the Lord is not with Israel or the Ephraimites. But if you go with them, do it. Be strong for battle. But God will make you stumble before the enemy, for God has the power to help or to make one stumble." Then Amaziah said to the man of God, "What shall I do about the 7,500 pounds of silver I gave to Israel's army?" The man of God said, "The Lord is able to give you much more than this." So Amaziah released the division that came to him from Ephraim to go home. But he got very angry with Judah and returned home in a fierce rage. Amaziah strengthened his position and led his people to the valley of Salt. He struck down 10,000 Seirites, and the Judahites captured 10,000 alive. They took them to the top of a cliff where they threw them off, and all of them were dashed to pieces. As for the men of the division that Amaziah sent back, so they would not go with him into battle, they raided the cities of Judah from Samaria to Beth Horon, struck down 3,000 of their people, and took a great deal of plunder. After Amaziah came from the attack of the Edomites, he brought the gods of the Seirites and set them up as his God. Remember, he also started well with the Lord, and now he was tilting towards idolatry. So he set up the gods of the Seirites and set them up and began to worship. He worshipped before them and burned incense to them. So the Lord's anger was against Amaziah, and he sent a prophet to him who said, "Why have you sought a person's gods and could not deliver their own people from your hands?" While he was still speaking to him, the king asked, "Have we made you the king's counselor? Stop. Why should you lose your life?" So the prophet stopped, but he said, "I know that the Lord intends to destroy you, because you have done this and have not listened to my advice." So King Amaziah of Judah took counsel and sent word to Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, king of Israel, saying, "Come, let's meet face to face." So King Joash of Israel sent word to King Amaziah of Judah, saying, "The thistle that was in Lebanon sent a message to the cedar that was in Lebanon, saying, 'Give your daughter to my son as a wife.' Then a wild animal that was in Lebanon passed by and trampled the thistle. You have said, 'Look, I have defeated Edom,' and you have become confident that you will get glory. Now stay at home. Why sit up? Okay, now stay at home. Why? Why stir up such trouble so that you fall and Judah with you?" But Amaziah would not listen, for this form of events was from God in order to hand them over to their enemies, because they went after the gods of Edom. So King Jehoash of Israel advanced. He and King Amaziah of Judah faced off at Beth Shemesh in Judah. Judah was rooted before Israel, and each fled to his own tent. King Jehoash of Israel captured Judah's king. King Joash of Israel captured Judah's king Amaziah, son of Joash, son of Jehoahaz, at Beth Shemesh. Then Joash took him to Jerusalem and broke down 200 yards of Jerusalem's wall from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate. He took all the gold, silver, and the utensils that were found with Obededom in God's temple, the treasures of the king's palace, and the hostages. Then he returned to Samaria. Judah's king Amaziah, son of Josiah, lived 15 years after the death of the king of Israel, Joash, son of Jehoash. The rest of the events of Amaziah's reign, from beginning to the end, are written down in the book of the kings of Judah and Israel. From the time Amaziah turned from following the Lord. Okay, he actually turned from following the Lord. From the time that Amaziah turned from following the Lord, a conspiracy was formed against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. However, men Okay, I'll take that again. From the time Amaziah turned from following the Lord, a conspiracy was formed against him in Jerusalem, and he fled to Lachish. However, men were sent after him to Lachish, and they put him to death there. They carried him back on horses and buried him with his fathers in the city of Judah. So Amaziah also um, passed on. But before that, we know that he also started well, but ended badly. I wonder